Well, welcome to a Bait Baron's diary. It's early summer, the sun's out, and you'll notice I've got my life jacket on. There's a beautiful southwesterly trickling into this corner, but unfortunately I'm not fishing. And I'm not fishing because the lake is shut. The fish spawned about a week ago, all up in the shallows, loads of the females and all the males obviously all in the mix. A lot of those females now have lost weight due to spawning, so their health is sort of deteriorated, their body weight's down, same with the males as well. And it's crucially important to shut the lakes, in my opinion. I cringe at some of the lakes that allow fishing through the spawning period and only shut off maybe 2 or 3 swims. I think that's absolutely barbaric in its essence. The fish need recovery, and the worst thing you can do is catch a female just after it's spawned. It's lost loads of energy, it's everything's down, everything's suppressed, and catching a fish at that time can be catastrophic long term for those fish. So as a rule on my lakes, I shut them as soon as the fish start spawning, ring all the members, put the message on the forums or on our Facebook page, and the lake is shut. And this is where now the work for me really starts. I've got a 6-week period to build those fish back up. And that, from the very start, that involves me going out into the lake, which I'm going to do in a minute, and putting some markers out. And then I put in supplementary feed. Now the supplementary feed could be anything from my factory floor, bits of paste, bits of boilie, offcuts, but also I put in at least a ton of micronized wheat and a ton of micronized maize as well as pellets, coarse pellet with a low oil content. So that will bring the fish's weights back up to not obviously post spawning to where they were, but they get back and it delivers to them protein content they need to repair. They need good quality protein to repair tissue damage that they've sustained through the spawning period. So after 6 weeks the lakes reopen. But also what we do on the opening night, we have a big barbecue. So we have a little draw for all the swims that happen this weekend. All the members will get their own swim, and that incentivises them to come down and pop some bait in, which is again is massively beneficial for the fish. So on the opening night we'll have a barbecue. It'll be a great social event, always is a good event every single year. A few beers, bit of food, and of course the magical cast in when the lake's open. So I'm going to get myself ready to go out in the pond. It's a bit choppy out there, but hence the life jacket, and I've got someone with me obviously for safety. But I can get these markers out and then I can start the feed. Well, finally the day is here. The lake opens today, and the relentless 6 weeks of baiting has taken its toll. It sounds quite easy, but the actual logistics of getting down the lake in the boat, out baiting up round the lake, different spots wherever the fish are, is taken its toll over the last few weeks, and I'm so glad it come to an end. Now this is not we don't feed the fish to build up to today to catch the fish. It's actually obviously for recovery as well. So these fish have been getting loads and loads of food over that period, and they're on their way back now to full fitness. So it's a great feeling to give something back to the fishery, keep the fish in tip-top condition, and really sets them up well for the rest of the summer. So I'm really looking forward to getting down today. The lake opens officially at 7 o'clock tonight. So a load of us going to go down there. We had a draw for swims early, so what that means is the guys have all got their swims straight from day one, and over that 6-week period it's up to them if they want to bait it up to improve their chances today. So a lot of guys have been doing that, which all feeds into the lake as well. But if I can go back on previous history of the lake, it usually fishes absolutely terrible when loads of lines go in the water. Yesterday I was down there seeing the fish, feeding them in close. They were behaving totally naturally, but of course you know what it's like when a few rods go in the water, a few leads start hitting the lake, everything changes, and I think that's going to be exactly what's going to happen tonight. But fingers crossed, it usually does 1 or 2, and if it does, then we're bringing that to you. So I'm just finishing up. I've had a really busy morning. Loads of guys in the shop on a Saturday. I'm just about to finish, and I've got a few errands to run, so I'm going to nip over to my favourite butcher's over the road, the old Jesse Smith's, do some cracking meat over there. I'm going to grab some sausages and maybe some burgers and see what else they got, and then I'm going to grab my fishing gear, then head down the lake and get set up, and I can't wait to enjoy today, because it's a great social event. Loads of our members will come, some who's not fishing, some who is fishing as well, but we all get together, have a beer and a barbecue, and yeah, put the world to rights. So without further ado, I'm going to get off and get down there and get fishing. So this butcher's has been open for about 4 or 5 years now, and it's become an absolute firm favourite, not only with myself but also lots of anglers around the water park. Do lots of bundle deals on the meat, and there's everything you could wish for, being obviously a butcher's. They do loads of marinades as well, so I thought it would be wise, seeing that it's just over the road from us, just to pop in there, see what's there, and grab some extra bits and pieces for the barbecue. Now, we always overstock the barbecue. Anglers bring all sorts of meats to it, but we always have far too much, and horribly we end up chucking a lot away, or a lot of it comes back to my house for the freezer. So me and Claire, we eat like kings and queens for at least a week or 2. But over at the butcher's then, it didn't disappoint. Loads and loads of options, and I ended up getting some lamb chops and a few extra mint lamb burgers, which I thought would go down a treat for the barbecue. But I could see that a lot of the guys have already been there before. The shells were somewhat sparse, shall we say, so I know a few of the guys would have gone there in the morning fully loaded and stocked up. So I was anticipating once again loads and loads and loads of meat, but hey, it's not a bad thing. Not a green bit of salad in sight, but plenty of protein. Well, I couldn't leave this place without one of the legendary Scotch eggs that they do, and I introduced Mike to it. He's never had one before, and they never failed to disappoint. I needed a little pick-me-up before I went down to get my fishing gear into the lake, and these were just the ticket.
Mate, I'm unsure about these. Well, mine looks a bit pink.
Yeah, they don't get cooked all the way in the middle, do they?
Do they not?
No, not really. Sort of.
Edible?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Alright. They're nice, though. Yeah. Take Scotch eggs to a whole new level, that does. Right, see you in a bit. Enjoy.
Well, nipping back to the house to grab all my bits and pieces, I knew it was going to be a task in itself, because I'm not the most organised of guys. I only get a limited time, and quite often I find myself fishing a variety of waters. So I could be stalking one day, I could be fishing long range, and then I could be fishing in the margins the next. So I'm having to break down rods and get all my tackle together all the time, and it makes for quite a stressful time. But I managed to chuck a load of stuff in the van, make sure everything was there, important stuff like the landing net, but also I like to bring out my retro gear for the start of the year. So I use my Cardinals and my old Soundmaster Germans for the opening night. It's a bit of a tradition. So with the van packed, headed down to the lake fully loaded, and also I had one of our new baits on test, which I was keen to give a go. So I thought, yep, gonna give that a run tonight and see what happens. So arriving down at the lake, there was already a few guys there and the barbecue had already been started, and from previous years I knew that if I didn't go and get my gear set up, you were in danger of not fishing that night, because you leave the barbecue obviously in the dark, and I just couldn't let that happen. So I went to my swim, got my gear set up, but little did I know it was going to be very short-lived. Well, I can't stay in that swim. There's that wind's changed yesterday and the fish have all gone at the top end, and luckily for me, one of the anglers couldn't make it. He picked one of the top pegs right at the top end in the orchard. So I'm going to get on my toes and get out there before anyone else has the same idea as me, because there's loads up there. Well, getting up to the top end I thought was going to be a good move. There was obviously no fish down in the southwesterly wind corner where I drew, and now with that northeasterly wind it was pumping at the top end, and the fish are just up sticks and gone with them. And when you leave the fish for any period of time, only 6 weeks, they start to behave in a natural state and they're not dictated to by line or anglers, and that's where they wanted to be. And there was absolutely loads up there, and some very, very big fish that I'd spotted from the tree. So my priority was to get up there and to find a couple of areas quickly and discreetly, because there was loads and loads of weed up there, but I knew the swim fairly well, and there was a couple of spots really, really close in, only sort of 6 or 7 wraps, so very, very close in spots, ideal fishing. So a couple of light leads, just plopping out onto the areas just to make sure they were still clean, and then I set about getting the rigs ready, getting all the rods wrapped up and clipped, and also introducing a little bit of bait as well. Absolutely key to get some food out there and then to just sneak off, and I thought that would give me the best chance of a fish on opening night. Well, by the time I got round to the barbecue, it was already in full swing. Music was playing, smoke was bellowing out of the barbecue, the smell of cooked meat was rife in the air. So it was lovely to sit down and just have a cold drink, cold beer, cold wine, whatever tickles your fancy. But it was amazing on days like this to bring everyone together and just to sit down and relax and just take a well-earned break sometimes from people, from life. You know, carp fishing is a great level. It brings all people on this syndicate, different walks of life, different jobs, different things going on at home personally, but when you come through the gate you can just sit down, put the worlds to rights, and just all come together for the common good, and that is, you know, the fishery that's been created here. I'm very lucky to be in nearly my 10th year. The syndicate formed about 9 years ago, and to have this place as a hole in the ground, a total blank canvas. So to bring in nature and obviously the fish are obviously very important, but to bring in all the reeds, trees, all the fauna around the pond is just as important. And you know, at the end of the day, we're all conservationists, and a lot of the guys on the syndicate love the nature side as well, so we've tried to really embellish and bring as much as we can into the fishery in the shape of, you know, bird boxes, or it might be, you know, obviously reed beds, wild meadow flowers, all sorts that go into creating what is a natural haven for wildlife. So when you come through that door, shut the gates, you've got a playground of nature to go and lose yourself in for a day, hour, a week, whatever it may be. But it's great to bring all the syndicate together on days like this and just to reflect, because it's been a long road, lots and lots of work, and everyone's worked incredibly hard to get the fishery to where it is today, particularly with the otter fence that we put in by hand and dug all the posts in. That took a monumental effort over a 3-year period, but the lake is safe, really important, the fish are thriving, and it's great to celebrate that. You know, no better way to do it is on opening night, to have a few beers, a barbecue, hopefully a few fish caught, but to see everyone and just to sit down and chill out, and that's exactly what we did. See, Giles brought his own cups in with Mark Harris. They take it steady, don't they?
I've been in last year's, haven't I?
3-point parts. I was going to say you drained it.
I want to know what that thing is dangling off your glasses.
Oh, that there is, yeah. Are you seeing that? Keep it quiet. Keep it real. Over and out.
So these events are family orientated as well. We've all grown up with the lake and we've all had kids, and we invite everyone down, families. So I knew Claire and Darcy were coming down, so it was lovely to see them in this environment where Darcy can run around and play, and yeah, you sort of keep an eye on them obviously because you've got a lake there, but they can just run around and fall into the grass, and yeah, absolutely lovely. The other guys brought their kids down as well, and a few dogs would appear, and a lot of the members came down who weren't fishing, who just wanted to enjoy themselves, soak up the atmosphere, and some of those guys end up staying invariably. They always put a bivvy or a bed chair in the back of the car, and of course after a bit of food and a few beers, they just camped out in the car park. So yeah, it was lovely to see everyone enjoy the day. But 7 o'clock was rolling around, and that was the time historically when we cast out, and from where we were positioned, Jake was fishing right down the far end, but we could see pretty much a line where his bait was, or where the area where he was fishing, and we saw fish after fish head and shoulder in, and I knew Jake was itching to get over there to cast out dead on 7 o'clock, and who could blame him? The fish were there and there was a great opportunity to hopefully catch a fish. So it was no surprise at 7:15, looking round, Jake was gone, and then a big cheer went up from the barbecue area when we got a text through to say Jake had landed a fish at about sort of 7:20. So great to see the first fish landed from the opening night, the first one, and I was hopeful that there was going to be a few more. So with the barbecue in full swing for the evening, we set up the beer pong. Absolutely fantastic game for anyone who hasn't played it. I've played a lot of this when I was back in my university days, so not to say I was a bit of a master back then, but I'm not bad at the old beer pong, so I can hold my own. But some of the guys hadn't played it, and it was a shock and surprise how well a couple of the members did, and they absolutely ran the roost, and yeah, we managed to beat our adversaries a couple of times, meaning that they had to sink a lot of the beers that had been spiked with a bit of gin as well. So yeah, glad I wasn't on the end of that. So with the barbecue winding down, it was everyone was thinking about getting their heads down for the night. You get some beautiful sunsets here at the lake. The sun just dips over the horizon. Everything falls quiet. It's absolutely beautiful end of the water park here. Absolutely stunning. So with the light fading, we all sort of melted away to get the rods out for the night, and full of anticipation of what could happen. So getting my head down about 11:30, I knew there was only going to be probably another 4 or 5 hours sleep before the inevitable sun would be beating into my face, the dawn chorus would be in full bloom, and I'll be waking from my slumber. And that's exactly what happened. So I was led on my bed chair in the morning, catching up on the messages, seeing what had been caught around the lake, and to my surprise and delight, there's actually quite a few fish caught on the opening night, which is very rare. Usually fishes terribly, as I've said. So I sparked up a coffee, just catching up, seeing what's being caught, and then would you know it, I've caught a fish as well. So absolutely buzzing to get one. So I've put that in a sack, and I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, great to have a fish, a lovely little special one as well. But around the lake, lots of fish being caught, and what's more pleasing is the strains of the fish as well. I've worked incredibly hard on this fishery to make sure there's a variety of strains in the lake, and I think that's so important. It can get very boring if the lake was just full of one particular strain, in my opinion. I like all shapes and sizes, whether they're scaly, unscaly, short, fat, thin, whatever. it's lovely to have all different colours and shapes, and that was depicted with all the fish that was caught. They're all different, they're all very, very different, and I just think that's absolutely fantastic moving forward. So getting round to the guys just seeing their fish, just sharing in their moments, but also had a fish in the retainer myself. So getting that on the bank, it's a very special little fish. It's one of the Harrow varieties or Harrow strains from VS Fisheries, and these are just going to be absolutely monsters of the future, I'm sure. They've gone around the country, I already see them on the social media being caught elsewhere, and they just look like massive bruisers of fish. And to have a few in this lake here is, I'm always excited when I see them. So to see this little fish was epic. Fresh as a penny, pushing through. It just makes me very, very happy to see these fish. So the open night complete. It was all too soon to get packed down, unfortunately, and go back to the realities of life, and I knew that I had a very busy week again ahead of me. Lots and lots of things going on at Baitworks, all positive, but I knew that my life was going to be again back down in the unit, making base mixes and keeping these carp in the UK fed for another season. Well, we've just turned up at Baitworks, and I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk a little bit about bait. Unfortunately, in this day and age, bait doesn't really get talked about. So while I've got a bit of time here before everyone starts work, I thought I'd get a few ingredients out and show you what we do and probably some of my reasons for including these baits, and yeah, just have a chat about it. So right, let's get out, let's get in there. Well, here's some of the core ingredients, I suppose, that we use here at Baitworks. There are many others, but I've tried to isolate a few of them. And it's amazing to think all of this goes into making one of these little round balls. I wish it was that simple, but of course it isn't. Now, before I start on these little baits, I think it's really important to look at the quarry, look at the fish we're trying to catch, the carp, and looking at what they can detect. All this becomes useless if we're not putting in ingredients that they really like and stimulated to find and detect and eat. So first and foremost, the carp having the barbels, they're scavengers. There's lots of fish with barbels, and generally they're scavenging on the bottom. Catfish be another good example. So they're looking for degrading food and stuff that's breaking down naturally in their environment, and of course bloodworm, snails, shrimps, they're all secreting lots and lots of different things, but one of the key aspects of attraction that I find is amino acids, and that's no secret. That's been well documented over the last few decades. So I want to include ingredients that have these amino acids, the chains, the building blocks of protein within the baits. And once more, I need them to be soluble. I need them to break away. It can't be fibrous, because if you could put a lump of steak into a bait, couldn't you, in theory, but it won't break down. The carp haven't got the enzymes or the stomachs, because it's basically just a tube that goes through them. They don't produce pepsin like many other animals are like us with acids. They don't produce that, so it's a very simple digestion process that goes through their tract. So we've got to give them something they can utilise, and it's no good giving them something quite fibrous, because that'll just go straight through them, a bit like a whole tiger nut does. It gets crushed, but it literally goes straight out the other side. So we're starting off with the carp, looking at what they find hugely attractive, and that comes out of lots of tank tests. We've spent painstaking hours and hours watching them observe fish, but there's some ingredients that just stand out. Your fish meals and your marine derived products usually have a very high protein content. There's different grades of all of these, but they're very, very attractive, and we utilised some of those into our bait range. But if we start with the humble boilie, you'll notice I'm trying to squeeze there, it's quite firm, and that's where the name boilie came from. It's basically, it gets put into a pan, boiled, and you get a skin around a bait. Now the skin around the bait, nowadays there's lots of different binder systems to create that skin. But one of the best ones, and probably used for, I don't know, 60-70% of the bait industry, is egg derived products. So usually egg powders, the humble egg itself, or egg albumin. And all that's doing is, when that's going in the boiler systems, it's basically fusing and gelling at a temperature, usually around the 75 to 85 degrees. That's when the egg will, a bit like a scrambled egg, if you like, when you pop it in a frying pan, it will come together. And that's always happening with the boilie. Now, ideally, you want to be boiling these boilies around about the 85 degree mark. That's what I found is the most beneficial for keeping intact all those delicate protein chains that we've just talked about, and those amino acids. As soon as you start boiling at 100 degrees or steaming, which can be a higher temperature, you can start denaturing, and that's exactly what we don't want. You go all to the pain and trouble of creating one of these little balls, and the last thing you want to do is chuck it in a boiler and nuke it to death. So that's a consideration. So you know, we have machinery, particularly boiling apparatus, that boils at a low level. So we're not creating excess steam, and we're not creating loads and loads of heat. So that's the boilie, that's the skin. And all we're doing is literally just using something to bring all these ingredients together. If we didn't use binders within the bait, we'd end up, when we go to boil it, a sloppy mess in the boiling system. So we're bringing it together with a skin. Obviously, for the anglers then can use it, we can go out in a catapult or a throwing stick, and then we've got longevity on the bottom of the lake and a slow release time, so crucially important. So let's break down some of the other ingredients within the bait. And as I mentioned at the start, our carp are hardwired to detect amino acids. Now, amino acids, for those who don't know, are the building blocks of protein. So it stands to reason, as a bait maker, I want to introduce some of this into my bait. I don't want 100% protein within the bait, because it can be utilised by the carp. It'd be a waste and very expensive, but I want a percentage in there. And there's many ingredients we can use to do this, and some of the best ones are marine derived. There are others, but if you look at what the pellet industry for aquatics, where they're feeding fish globally across the world, they are using fish meal for nutritional reasons, but also it brings in a high level of attraction as well. So of course you're going to see these within most bait makers' armory for making a bait. Now, all fish meal is not made equal, of course, in life. So I just want to talk a little about fish meal, and there's different grades of them and how they're processed, and how that leads me to pick the ones that I want for Baitworks. So fundamentally, I'm going to break it down so it's really quite simple. There's a few processes, but I'm going to pick out three. One is the flame dried. So as the name suggests, the fish meal is processed, and then you've got to get the moisture content down. And the quickest way to do that is to stick a flame under it and almost cook it. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, when you cook or add heat to these very delicate amino acids and the protein, it can make that protein less available, so it damages the structure essentially. So that fish meal, unfortunately for me, as a byproduct as well, brings in a lot of ash from the flame process, so you're paying for a bit of ash there. But in terms of attraction, then I find these fish meals quite cheap. They sometimes used for a step away from sort of the fertilizers, but in terms of bringing attraction in, then I think there's far better processes. And the next process I'm going to talk about is low temperature fish meals. As the name suggests, these are processed at much lower temperatures. It's a slightly longer process, hence the price, but it keeps intact the protein chains much better than the flame dried. So this means you're still getting a really good product, the low temp fish meals, and they're utilised within lots and lots of different diets, and certainly we use them here at Baitworks, so that's a much better process for keeping intact that protein. We get to the Rolls Royce, I suppose, of the fish meal, and that's going into your pre-digested. Now, as this name suggests, it's already been sort of broken down, and they do this by using enzymes. So it's taking those long amino acid chains, the build up of that particular protein, and actually chopping them with the use of enzymes, and that makes them into smaller form amino acid chains, which are much more utilised and available for carp when they digest them. So they are absolutely superb attraction wise, and these type of fish meals bring in a degree of solubility. And solubility is very, very important within carp baits. It has to be soluble for carp to sort of detect it in the water. So there's your 3 sort of types of fish meal, and it's no surprise which way we sway to, and that's the higher grade. Because of the attraction and because of the protein content, they're absolutely superb. So the protein is not the be-all and end-all of a carp bait. There's many other ingredients that we utilise, and I've got a few out here at the moment, which I'm just going to touch on and just go through. But let's not forget, back years and years ago, a lot of these high-protein baits that was the fad, that was the thing that was done, and they brought in such a high protein content that a lot of the carp couldn't utilise all of that anyway, and a lot of it was being excreted as waste. It just wasn't a very efficient way of doing things. So we're bringing in a protein content, yes, very important of the bait at a certain level, a certain percentage, but then there's many other ingredients here that we are using to provide different functions, and I'm just going to pick out a few here. If I brought all the ingredients up to go into, say, that bait there, it'd be right out. I wouldn't have enough space on the table probably, but if I just pick out a few, then you notice some of these are quite coarse as well, and I think it's hugely important for carp baits is to have free flow of water in and out the bait, because at the end of the day we've put a skin around the bait. Now if we put too much of a skin or we've bound it too hard, the bait's going to sit at the bottom of the lake and it is literally just going to not take in water, and if water's not going in, nothing's coming out. And when I talked about solubility earlier of bait, it's crucially important that you want that bait to pump out attractors, food signals, and the only way you're going to do that is have something going in the way, and that's where you want water. And some of these ingredients here, I'll just pick out this one. This is our own mix that I formulated myself of different bird foods and nut meals. So they are very, very coarse, as you can see in their texture, and what that helps is to give the bait an open pore, to let the water rushing through some of these ingredients, because they will suck on water, and water penetration then goes into the bait. Absolutely crucial. Also, this one here is a seaweed meal, so it does the same function as well, very hygroscopic, so it wants to suck in water as soon as it goes in, being a seaweed, but also brings in a very important vitamin and mineral supplement to the bait, particularly high in vitamin E, which is an important one. So those are some of the coarser ingredients that we have. We've got some of the classics there, like Robin Red, which is bringing in a sort of a spicy element to the bait. Great believer in spice with the bait, help move the food through the transit line of the fish quite quickly. And also you'll notice here there is a couple of liquids as well. So here we've got the good old-fashioned salmon oil, widely used throughout the industry, brings in a very good fat content, lipid source for the bait, really important for brain function for the carp, and they absolutely love it, particularly through the summer months. And then we've got another liquid which is more soluble, and this is a liquid fish derived product. So as I mentioned earlier in the fish meal process, then this is actually a pure liquid fish that's just been stabilized, so hugely attractive, very short amino acid chains through the process that it's made. So we put that into a bait, and that will leach out the bait very quickly on impact with water and over a 12-14 hour period, say, when you're fishing. So very attractive liquids, very important to the bait. And of course I couldn't stop without mentioning, or go any further without mentioning, a flavour profile as well. There's loads of different flavours out there. Crikey, that's a whole subject in itself. But having a flavour profile to the bait, yes, but using some of these ingredients here, utilising the binders, free flow of it, water exchange. We've got some of your semolinas and your soya flowers. All these are helping bind the bait, bringing in some level of attraction, but everything that goes into this is ending up with a little round ball which will hopefully catch you loads of fish. Well, that brings my diary piece to the end for another few months, and right now I've got to go and target this fish. Now, any of you who listen to the podcasts, or I mentioned it in my diary piece before, there's a particularly old fish that's well over 40 years old, probably even 45 years old, and it hasn't got long left, I know, and it's just one that I dearly love to have in my album. And this fish has led me a merry dance for a number of years now. And when I very first got the ticket for this lake, I lost it within 10 minutes of joining the lake on a floater on the top. So it's got me and that fish. I've got history. And over the last 3 years particularly, I've been trying to target it, doing little spells. I don't get loads and loads of time, but I get little certain points in the summer or spring or whenever it is in the autumn when I can go and target this particular fish. And I've been lucky enough to catch quite a few of its mates over the years, and they've all got stories to tell, and all old fish and beautiful in their own right. But that one carp has eluded me, and you sometimes think your name's just not on it. But I'm going to try and put that right. I've got a little spell coming up now where I can get down and fully focus on it. Everything's fine at the factory, bait's going out the door, and yeah, I'm keen to get down there and set the record straight with this fish, hopefully. So I've got my bag of bait. I'm going to nip down over the next few days and try and track this down. It's a bit of a loner, but from previous history, I know where it likes to spend the summer. So yeah, wish me luck, and on the next one, who knows what's going to happen. But anyway, I'll keep you updated.
That's what you want. That's the one you want. Right.